Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. Catan Lorelei here, and today we're going to be playing some Magic the Gathering Arena. We're going to be doing some standard ranked battles to get our ranking up here for this current season. And to do that, we're going to start it off with just one of my favorites, but definitely one of the simplest ways to start climbing the ranks. The mono red standard best of one deck, my personal little creation here. There's several variations. Red deck wins is a very common theme no matter what standard rotation you're in, and well, let's break it down for you so you know how it works. 60 cards, and the festivities is going to be our first 4 of in the deck. Deals 1 damage to each opponent and each creature and planeswalker they control. It's a nice little sweeping effect, and it is surprisingly useful in this deck. That's why we have 4 of, and at 1, you can't really beat it. And we have our another 1-drop here of Kumano, and it does a lot, but hits the field for 1, deals damage to each opponent and each planeswalker they control. It's especially helpful. We don't see terribly too many planeswalkers that are on the field like in the days of the last Ravnica set that we had out, but it's still very useful. It pumps the creatures on turn 2, giving them a +1/+1 counter when you cast it. We don't have terribly too many creatures in this deck, but a little buff to them is never a bad idea. And then on turn 3, you exile the Saga, and it transforms into this 2/2 creature with haste, but it has the text of if the creature is dealt damage this turn by a source you control would die, exile it instead. And that is very helpful for some significant removal, especially with some creatures that have a little bit of some persistence coming back. We got another 1-drop over here, Play with Fire. We got 4 of here, and 2 damage to any target. If the player is dealt damage this way, scry 1 for 1 red mana, you can't beat it, and it's definitely something that you always want to have in your hand. Direct damage is the name of the game here. We have a newcomer here, a bit of a sleeper, but I saw a lot of potential in it. Sawblade Scamp. It has haste, it's a 1/1, but it's not really doing a lot of work with direct fighting. The text on here reads, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put an oil counter on Sawblade Scamp. When you tap it, remove an oil counter from Sawblade Scamp. It deals 1 damage to each opponent. Now this is very nice because this is definitely going to be able to allow you to deal damage still to the opponent, even if they get some beefier creatures out in the later turns 3 and beyond. And that's where this deck is going to be excelling. Keep dealing the damage no matter what creatures they have out. Of course, in that same breath, we have the Kessing Flame Breather. It's a 1/3. He's got a little nice defense stats on him, just in case some smaller 1-drop, 2-drop creatures start getting through. It can absorb some damage, but at the same time, it definitely can deal some out. Not by attacking again, but every single time we cast a non-creature spell, it'll deal 1 damage to each opponent. And that includes enchantments, that includes instants, sorceries, planeswalkers, artifacts, anything that's not a creature. I like it. That's why there's 4 of it here. And for 2, it's definitely a fantastic turn 2 play. Lightning Strike, pure and simple. 1 and a red. 2 altogether. Deal 3 damage to any target. Use it to take out a creature. Use it to hit them for a good amount of damage directly to the face. Use it to take out an annoying planeswalker, whatever have you. It's a great thing to see no matter when you draw it. Reckless Impulse. Now, one of the big things that red decks suffer from is their ability to burn through their own hands. Now, this ensures us that we're going to have the ability to draw some cards and have some cards to play with, because what good is a bunch of mana on the field when we have no cards to actually cast? So for this, we can exile the top 2 cards of our library until the end of your next turn, and you can play those cards. It's very important because what will end up happening is in the later games, we're going to have a decent amount of land. Like, I'd say once we start getting into about turn 4, turn 5, we're going to be dealing with 4 mana, 5 mana. But as you can see, our curve is actually very small. We have 3-drop is the highest. So as a result, we're going to be able to cast more than 1 spell, ideally, each turn. And we're going to burn through our hand really quickly. So for 2 mana, it's definitely the way to go. And it counts as a sorcery, so it can definitely start triggering some of the other trigger effects that are in this deck. Speaking of which, next is the Thermo Alchemist. For 1 and 1 red, it's got Defender. Tap it, it deals 1 damage to each opponent, and then whenever you cast an instant or a sorcery spell, you untap it. It's good for pinging left, right, and center. It's got a good defensive structure on it. It'll stop some of the smaller creatures from getting in, but hopefully by the time some of the bigger creatures start to make their debut, you have more than a couple of these direct damage pieces on the field to really start pinging them down into the single digits. And speaking of some of the correct stones of our decks, we have Chandra, Dressed to Kill. Fantastic Planeswalker, 4/3. Chandra always has a place in red, but this particular iteration gives us a +1 ability of adding a red mana and dealing 1 damage to up to 1 target player or Planeswalker each turn. It's very good, and oftentimes in turn 3, it is a very good play to throw her down for 3 mana, add an additional mana, have her hit the other opponent for 1, and then cast any of our 1-drops, of which we have many. And it definitely keeps us pressuring them. And keeping them on the back foot is essential, because direct damage is kind of the name of the game here, and we only got 1 move, and that's it. But we do it well. For her second +1, again, it fixes a big problem this deck could have, in that we don't have any cards to cast because we burned through them all. Exile the top card of your library. If it's red, you may cast it this turn. It's great, and we definitely need to pull some cards if we're going to win this game. Now, the +7 or the -7 ability is a little bit difficult to get to, but if you can get to it, it definitely tilts the game in your favor. Exile the top 5 cards of your library. You may cast red spells from among them this turn. You get an emblem with whenever you cast a red spell, this emblem deals X damage to any target, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast that spell. Now, granted, we do have very low costing spells, but by the same token, all of our spells usually tend to do some damage. So it's damage on damage from anywhere between 1 to 3, and since it's being dealt directly to them, that can really add up. Now, the third one here, we have Guest Flame Reservoir. Again, the theme of this deck is hit them in the face and draw some cards. And this does both very well. Whenever you cast an instant or a sorcery spell, put a charge counter on Guest Flame Reservoir. 1 in a red and tap and remove any number of charge counters from Guest Flame Reservoir, and it deals that much damage to any target. It's a good removal for when you absolutely need something removed, and over time it gets a heck of a lot better, because that's just every instant spell, charging it up. It can easily finish the game, and I've finished the game many times with Guest Flame Reservoir. Also, its secondary ability, because you get a nice little 2-for-1 on this, is 1 in a red and tap it and exile the top card of your library, and you may play that card this turn. It, again, solves a big problem of us just burning through our hand and them always having the card advantage. It's a bad place to be, but if you're not playing the cards, then what are we doing here? And then we have the final piece, which I think ties the whole deck together: Mechanized Warfare. If a red or artifact source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage +1 instead. And now this is where this deck starts to shine. 1 damage here, 2 damage here, that can, hurt a little bit here and there. 1 damage being dealt to creatures on the field for, 1 mana, or 2 damage for 1 mana, that's fine, but these stack. So if you get 1 or 2 of these, and all of a sudden you're throwing down a Play with Fire, 2 damage for just 1, that's stacking on. Now it's 3 damage, now it's 4 damage, now it's 5 damage to any target just for 1. And that can have some serious consequences, especially when the damage is coming from passive effects, like the Sawblade Scamp, like the Kessing Flame Breather, like the Thermo Alchemists, like Chandra, like the Guest Flame Reservoir, which again may not be passive because you have to actively do a couple things to it, but with the other individuals involved here. All of a sudden they're pinging 1 damage. Now all of a sudden it moves up to 2 damage and moves up to 3 damage and moves up to 4 damage. It puts them on a clock, and that clock just increases a lot faster. And with 18 mountains and a relatively low mana curve cost, we can get a lot of this stuff done pretty quickly. But you know what? That's a lot of talk, and let's actually see it in action. So let's get it up. Standard ranked for the deck. We got red. Red deck wins. It might be annoying to some people, but when you're trying to climb the ranks, especially when you're mid-season like I am doing right now, it helps. Because the last thing you want to do is sit here training blows and getting nowhere. Once we get up into the higher ranks, we might be able to encounter a couple of decks we can emulate or, you know, try to better ourselves. But let's do this. Herbert. Okay, Herbert. Let's see what we got going on here. Okay. We can do this. With the opponent going first, we'll keep the 7. Oh, we got Toxic on the field. Nope, we're not going to do that. Turn it off because toxic damage isn't our friend. Would be dealt to Phyrexian Vindicator. Prevent that damage. When damage is prevented this way, Phyrexian Vindicator deals that much damage to any other target. So we can't hit that. It's okay. 5 coming in the air. It's fine. Let's do this. Okay, it's fine. Probably hit to me. It's gonna try it. Ha ha! You missed, buddy. Probably not a good idea. But still. Okay, we're equipping, and it can't really do much of anything just yet. So let's. Okay, let's hit in the face. Boom. Good night, Sally. That's all she wrote. Boom. See you later, Herbert. And that's us moving up from Bronze Tier 2 to Bronze Tier 1. But you know what? That's just a one-off. So we're definitely going to be showcasing a little bit more of this deck with our climbs. And hope you liked it. And give us a couple of comments and see what you think. Any improvements you want to see? Anything you want to add, take away? We'll definitely be bringing you some more best of 1 standard ranked videos, so stay tuned.